As you already know them, you can perhaps come up to the stage. I won't even give you their names. And whilst they're coming up to stage, I'd like to take a minute to advertise something. I'm really happy that Sara Baliña, who represents the forecasting office, has put so much emphasis on long-term care and the economy of aging. I didn't expect her to do that, so I'd like to highlight this. As you can see, the people that are joining me today are people that have either chaired other sessions or people that have been invited by Alfonso Gurpegui and by Paco to think about this conference, and it's maybe a sort of a closing ceremony in the beginning. These people, you'd have seen them a few months ago just via Zoom. But a few months ago we were thinking about this conference. What would we be talking about? We called people, organized it, and now it's happening. So what I'm going to do now is going to ask you in the order in which you've appeared and ask you to just give us a very, very mini tweet message of how you'd like us to close this event. I remember what Anton Costas said, because he highlighted something which is key to the way we've approached this Congress, which is a type of social contract. What we thought about when we talk about inclusive quality employment for a new social contract, we're not talking about a time of inertia, of continuity, but we're at a time where we need to reshuffle our cards. The social contract is being questioned. It's in jeopardy for perhaps many reasons that are being spoken about today. And I remember what Anton Costa said when he said that employment is going to be the heart of the social contract. So we can't think of social contract that includes everybody if we don't put employment, quality, inclusive employment at the heart of that social contract. I have my doubts, and as Sara ended up saying, it's not so much we need to protect a worker, but a person. And it's not the job that gives you social rights, but the fact that you're a person. I've been thinking about that. To what extent are we concentrating on jobs, on the mercantilization of our activities, or are there other things? Care, primary family care, that are not mercantilized and have not become jobs, but are also important. That was sort of left in the air. And undoubtedly, without a job, without a quality job, without a job, an inclusive job, it's going to be very difficult for society to progress. I'd like to start with Sara Larrica. Sara Larrica, when I look at her, I remember Yolanda Diaz every Wednesday when she tortures. She says, "Oh, I'm going to give you some figures. We know that she's a woman who knows how to tell us about data." And you spoke a lot about data. And I realized that you didn't actually agree with the president of Confebasque when he said there wasn't so much precariousness. What would your tweet be for these last couple of days, for the people that are actually admiring you and looking to you? Or a tweet, or 3 tweets. 140 characters, isn't it?
¿Ahora? Vale. Sí. Pues era que lo tenía apagado.
I had the microphone off. There are 3 or 4 ideas, key ideas. The first is what Anton said, the need for societies that are going through changes, and the market economy isn't going to improve. We need commitments so that those that have the most risk to lose are, to some extent, compensated for. These rules mean that we have to redistribute and pre-distribute before and redistribute afterwards. This is something that's related to what you said. The world is so complex and we are so diverse that we need to personalize. And when I say personalize, I mean that there will be services, support that are aimed at providing a quality employment that we're talking about, but also for other people that are a long way from the job market, i.e. that a job isn't their priority, but they have many other priorities. That's linked to what your said. The third idea, and moving on now to public employment services that we've spoken about a lot, they are vital to do this, to carry out this task, to try to advance towards a quality job by making sure that people meet companies' needs. It's only if we do that, if what people know or what they could possibly learn, if that isn't matched with a market niche, then things won't go as well as they should do. Something else, and to innovate. When I say innovate, I mean be daring. It's true that there's lots of things to overcome, and it's easy for me to say what I'm going to say. There are also many obstacles. We need to be brave. Those that have to take decisions need to be brave, even though that may well means that 2 or 3 years ago you leave and that's it. But be brave, because that's the future. The future is of the brave, and the decisions that you take today and that are bravely taken will bring us on to a better future. Those are the 4 messages that I take away. And something else, sorry. Transition. Anton mentioned this. Transition is important. Don't just think that in the future this is going to happen, because so many things happen along the way. So this is a little bit what I've been left with. Thank you, Sara. I don't know if you remember, but after the first interventions of those people that opened this, the minister who spoke about the European Union, and what Anton Costa said, I can remember Inigo, right in the middle of these social partners, these people that have to build an administration, the trade unions and the employers' organizations. I think we've tried to make visible in this Congress this idea of a social agreement. Of course, political power has legitimacy, but calls to the table, employers' organizations, trade unions. I think Inigo was the person who represented those that brought them round the table and asked them what they thought about things. So Inigo, what's your message? First, I'd like to say thank you, because I always get that panel session. I got it last time as well, last year, and I love it, because you're the best one to do it. I lose a couple of kilos, and it's not a good thing. It was really interesting. It's always interesting to see, to hear social partners, but there's something that's similar to what Sara and Fernando said. There was a time when somebody of the panelists said competitiveness, economic activity and employment, as if it was a linear equation. And it's true, there is a certain lineality. We have used economic capital, that creates competitiveness, and that ends up having a social benefit. But I realized actually that it's not just linear, it's circular. With a good job, people have more opportunities, and that makes you more competitive. Maybe we should see this as a circle, as a virtuous circle, and if we are able to understand it, maybe we can reach very distant places. And I link that to what Anton Costas, he spoke about the social contract. Normally we talk about the fact that companies create jobs. Yes, of course, companies on the front line, companies are struggling every day to be competitive, but it's impossible to have an employment contract if there's a social contract behind that. It's really important to create jobs so there isn't a social framework. We talk about regulatory issues and the issue of accompanying people and of training people. So not just the contract, but also the social context and how this creates social capital and how this is actually a virtual, non-linear route. There's something that I'm also interested in, which is a demographic side of things. How we've got a demography that's going to be with us. We know that's going to be with us. Many of us like demography because you can project demographic trends. The children of today are the adults of tomorrow, and if that doesn't happen, there's been a terrible catastrophe. And how demography is going to go along with us all the time, is going to be chaperoning us. We've got a lack of people, we're going to have a lack of working age people, but we've got a pocket of 120,000 people who can't find jobs. There are around 200,000 people also who want to change their jobs in the Basque Country. How can that be so? The people don't actually call you if you're above a certain age, especially when your skills can be better from a certain age onwards. So we need to realize that this demographic change is going to have an influence. This intersectionality which Sarah spoke about. And I, in the end, think, and we could carry on talking about that, to renew our public conversation about jobs, about businesses, about social partners and how we call things. Sarah spoke about the chronification of this. Nobody in the past knew that there was a problem of chronification in the Basque Country until recently, because we're just looking at averages. So there's three ideas: a job contract, a social contract, and the demographic side of things. I'm looking at Maria. When I look at Maria, I sometimes forget things. We need to match jobs with people. That's what we need to do. I look at Maria and I say, no. Jobs don't always exist. You have to invent them. You have to create them yourself. And this is something that actually comes to mind when I look at you, Maria. What do you think about this? Well, I think there's lots of ideas out there. And probably if you look back at everything that I've listened over the last 2 years, you realize that semantics is really important. We talk all the time about the idea of competitiveness, and we always talk about businesses. And after this 2-day summary, what's important in job terms is to start working more on people's competitiveness. People need to be competitive, not just businesses. Competitive people find better jobs when they finish studying, and they're probably going to be more competitive at ages in which it's very difficult to integrate. So we need to do away with ageism. So everything that's been mentioned at this conference regarding monitoring what you do to be competitive throughout your life, so that we can lengthen this competitiveness is key. Why? Because you take decisions all the time. You take very brave decisions, and some require entrepreneurship. So at the moment, focusing on people and legitimating bravery, I think, is something that's vital. I think it's also vital when we talk about employment policies. At least in my field, in the field of entrepreneurship, there's a sort of a clear separation between economic promotion policies related to technological entrepreneurship and employment policies, which normally in this field are left in the field of self-employment. But there's still a challenge out there, which is that, as we've seen during the panel sessions, and I think Enrique Subisenator said that, there's a lack of employment policies that support entrepreneurship so that those entrepreneurs can actually create more jobs. That is, employment policies that are designed for new forms of entrepreneurship to set up big, good companies in the future that create good jobs, which is what Anton said, in the future. That's what I take away from this. There are many things surrounding the basic part, which, and there's the educational side of things. There's still a lot to be done, because it would seem that we only train youngsters, but actually academic and educational institutions have a lot to say about lifelong training. And I think that this mix of generations makes people more competitive. So there are many challenges out there, and as there's a lot to be done, it's good. Still a lot to be done, and there's still a long time before we retire. A few days ago, I was here actually at a congress on bioethics, and one of the cornerstones of bioethics is do no harm. And I remember what Joseba said. Joseba said, sometimes actually activation harms people. Actually, you find a job for a person and you're harming him. You make it more difficult for them to be included socially. I think it's an interesting call, wake-up call. It is true that we found it difficult to find a title for this conference, and when you talk about the social contract, that actually helps you put things into perspective. There are a couple of things that I take away from this, which I feel, if we're going to understand completely what we mean by social contract, need to be highlighted. The first is social contract starts with training, education. We've spoken an awful lot about education. Maria spoke about lifelong learning. And I think we need to also insist, and I think that's something that was mentioned in the final talk, in taking a step backwards and looking at the socio-educations that we're seeing create these disadvantages that are being created in childhood, that are increasingly being created in our school playground, are socio-educational disadvantages which are going to affect the way these people access jobs. If we don't invest in ongoing training and university training, if we don't invest in education equality today, this problem, if we bear in mind the kind of jobs that are going to be developed in the future, this lack of investment, this lack of investment in educational inequality, I think, is going to create inequalities in the people that access good and bad jobs, which are going to be really difficult to reverse. We've heard that for a long time now, that the main area where we need to invest is in the 0 to 3 age groups. And this is the first 1,000 days of your life. That is, if you can't do it there, do it before they go to secondary school. Sometimes I think we're going backwards. We're creating more socio-educational disadvantage, inequality. And if you just look at social inequalities, that's important. And another side to the social contract, which is related to employment, is what Sara Baliña mentioned at the end. What sort of income policy, what sort of income guarantee policies should we follow in this model? And that's more defined by intermittence, by joining and leaving the labour market. And we need to move towards an income guarantee model that acts as a security net, not trampolines into jobs, which is what they've always been considered, but rather safety nets that need to be far more flexible, more agile, more automatic, and less there's less conditions attached to them. I think in the Basque Country a lot's been done in this income guarantee model. In Spain, with the minimum lifelong income, I think we're taking that route as well. But where I would pay more attention to is at the beginning and the end of this social contract, to see if we're, in addition to that, able to improve employment once a person is an adult. But the first part of that, the first part when they're being trained as a child, these are things that have cropped up, but that maybe are more important than we seem to realize. Thank you. I'd ask now Fernando Consuegra. Fernando, the Basque employment system. The Basque employment system, that's you. Fernando was Deputy Regional Minister. He's a leader in the third sector. He's a person who represents many of the figures that are included in the Basque employment system that the law wants to build. So what are your takeaways from this? For me, and I'm going to add to what's already been said, because I agree with much of what's been said. There's an overall issue, and then there are the two key issues. The overarching issue is one of the ideas that the first talk that we heard, and the one that most inspired us, the talk given by Anton Costa. He spoke about his time as a young man and what it's like now, and we saw the contradiction between economic efficiency and social justice, and how now you need to reconcile the two. And he spoke about a new paradigm, a paradigm shift, and Sara in the Office for Economic Prospection spoke about the new economy by the 2050. But we're lucky because many people have been working in this for many years. The social economy, support economy, common goods. There's been a lot of efforts being done into that. But it's energy, it's kind of energy or trend, which allows us to be able to sit down and speak like this today. Because the world is changing in this sense as well. Unfortunately, international organizations have recognized that, because there's a terrible amount of inequality. Prosperous societies won't operate if people are excluded from society, or people or societies that are very unequal. This is something for the brave, for decisions on innovation. There's this undertow, this favorable undertow, which is linked for me to the fourth transition, which is organizations. That's where we're going to go down to the key question.
Está en la nube.
And we've also mentioned this idea that is explained in different ways, and that Alfonso also mentioned, and that is addressing the core aspect not only of the employment system, that is its aim, its function, what it's aimed at, what is the objective of this system. And there are other elements to bear in mind, and that's the way in which we address people and what we offer to them, and then the companies. And with individuals, we're talking about personalization. And after big data and all processes and so on and so forth, we cannot provide this without generating trust and time to be able to provide them the adequate services and procedures. On the other hand, this means that the organizations behind it need flexibility to be able to provide those services. They need a black box of services. Then businesses also need to understand employment in the company and what is the language of businesses. Jaime has insisted on this, but many others have also mentioned this. We need to be close to the business sector, understand their language, and understand it in its context. This will be fundamental. If not, we will be theorizing and speaking from a place that is further away. And to achieve this, we need organizations, both public organizations and transformation processes, but also private organizations. Create learning communities and to establish stable systems that allow everyone to work in these systems with stability. And I finish with the last one that Anton Costa also mentioned, and that is that one key is the management of transitions. The green transition, the digital transition, the demographic transition that can be planned. We have the data. It is true that many changes can arise, but we can plan and help populations have a place in this environment that is will provide them with a better situation. When we talk about professional pathways, these are transitions going from A to B that has much to do with the digital transition. Thank you, Fernando. So little by little, we've built this macro framework. Then we've talked about the narrative of Anton Costas and how this somehow needs to be agreed with the social agents, entrepreneurship, and another side of things to those jobs that have to be created, as well as inclusion. And we've also addressed this view of the Basque system. But at the end of the day, we need the tool, and that would be Lanbide, which Javier represents. The tool that we have to put this forward. So when I see Javier, I see Lanbide, so that's why I was asking Javier, how will you finish? Can you give us 1, 2, or 3 ideas to close this session? More than an idea, this is an acknowledgement to the inspiration of the territory. I'm not sure if you're aware of all the people from Galicia that were here. And for me, it's been really inspiring. Ideas. Well, you mentioned one that Anton already mentioned, and that has to do with the subsidiarity of the economic policy and employment policy. And even though it might seem marginal, this is something that made us reflect, because if there's a deterioration and a loss of wealth, then we can justify those populisms that we are so concerned about. So the importance of this employment policy regarding this. And then another idea is has to do with what the European Commissioner said. We face a moment of opportunity till 2024, and like Alfonso said, we face many difficulties, but we've never had like in this moment the opportunity, the energy, and the resources. So this is 2 or 3 years for a deep transformation. And then from the view of the public employment services, we need to also look at what Maria was saying. We need to be entrepreneurs. The public services have to take risks. They need to feel that they are helping others, and this will allow us to get out of our comfort zone. And then finally, what Maru was saying, we can have the best methodologies and the best instruments. But if we do not do things, we will still be at the starting point. So it's 2:05. I think that Micah is getting up. I don't know if we finish here or if you will be continuing with this session. I'm really sorry, but I have to stop you here. Don't make me feel bad about it. It's been a pleasure to listen to you all. I believe that the conclusions for our fourth conference of employment is wonderful. You're also a good professional. I know a lot about the media. Yes, and I'm older than 45, so I was asking the deputy minister if I had to reskill to see in which positions I can work in the future. Fernando, Sara, Joseba, Íñigo, Maria, Javier, and Fernando Fantova. Thank you all for being here. And we are almost finished. In the last 2 days, we've talked about issues that have a great effect on the labor market and also employment. And as I was saying, the title for this conference was a declaration of intentions of the employment department, because we want to have inclusive employment with adjectives, something I've always liked. The objective is not only to create more employment, but for this employment to be of a quality. And we've talked about better improvement, Europeanized improvement, fair employment, humanistic employment, good employment, non-precarious employment. So we've talked about employment from an holistic perspective, and we've also, in this conclusions, heard something that is fighting for social justice is defending our economy, and that every time the world transforms, we go to Rousseau and the social contract, and that employment will be at the heart of this social contract. We've also heard that the employment system is a group of people that is learning. They have to be specialized in employment and not in administration management. And to finish, that beyond theory, we have to go to the dance floor, stop theorizing, and put in place pilot projects and take risks. Because Sara de la Rica also said this, and I would like to finish with this. Those of you that have to make decisions, in this case the organizer, the Basque government, you need to be courageous. And now we close this fourth conference on employment, and to do so we have Paco Pedraza, who will be now taking the floor. Paco, Director of Employment and Inclusion of the Employment Department of the Basque Government, you have the floor. Good morning. First of all, I would like to thank Eva for her kind words, and after listening to all of you after a couple of days, I honestly don't have anything new to add. We've had the opportunity of listening to first level speakers, and we've been able to enjoy this very interesting panel sessions and talks. There's a couple of comments I have that probably repeat what has already been said, but that I would like to say. And this brings me back to the origin of my work when organizing this conference. When in March we started to work on this, I was lucky enough that I started to work when the Basque strategy for employment was being passed. And this helped the group a lot, specifically the scientific committee, because from the starting point we wanted to make sure that this would be the motto for our conference. We reflected on this, and we were sure that inclusive and quality employment was going to be our motto. This is adopted from the Basque strategy, and to this we add for a new social contract. So this was an important addition, because really when we say for a new social contract, what we're saying is that we need a better employment to renew the social contract. That is, the social contract, it was not only a great invention of Rousseau that I studied in my time, but it's also the basis of creating a community, of participating, and of allowing everyone to be a part of the community. So I believe this is something we're all involved in, and we have to work to be able to attain this. And sometimes we doubt if this situation is fair. This was my first comment. The second one has to do with highlighting some of the ideas mentioned here. But there is a contradiction between quality employment and business competitiveness. And in this debate, sometimes we see that there is a difference. Sometimes we look into how this could be a driving force. So, I'm not going to make more comments nor repeat myself or what others have said in this 2 days, and I'm sure you're all tired by now. What I would like to do now is to speak about the emotional side of things in this conference. I would like not to forget anyone. This has been a very interesting process for me. When I had a problem, one of the first things I asked myself was if I would be able to be part of this conference. Unfortunately, I'm here. So first of all, I would like to start by thanking, and let's see if I can't forget anyone. I have a list here. I would start with our authorities that were here in the opening session, and I would like to thank our Deputy President, Yamendia, that has not only been here but also actively participated. So thank you. I would also like to thank the speakers, the panel, and everyone participating in the panel sessions. It's been wonderful, and many of them have opened the path to address new issues. How have we differentiated us with from last year? Last year we talked about building a Basque employment system, and this year maybe pathway has been the key word. We already had a compass, and that was the Basque employment strategy, but now it's not enough with the theory, we need to put it in practice. Many of the talks are going to help us, and next year we will be able to present a work program that is more specific. Also, I would like to thank my department colleagues, those that have organized the technical side of things, and the secretariat, because they've done all the background work, and now thanks to them we're here in this conference hall. And I would also like to mention the scientific committee, this working group that just provided us with the conclusions that were brilliant. I would also like to especially thank you for joining me from March till now, because your contribution has been essential. Thank you so much, and see you all soon. Thank you.